I knew three things when the Pale Hand ship docked at Nexus Station. One, someone on this station would die before the cycle ended. Two, every soul with even a fragment of survival instinct was already running. Three, Thaddeus Corvin was still eating his mushroom stew and complaining that I'd underpaid the spice merchant. My name is Silrus. I'm a symphony-class translator, which means my species evolved for communication, not courage. Our bones are hollow. Our feathers shift color with our emotions. Right now, watching the docking bay feed on my handheld display, they were cycling through every shade of fear my biology could produce. The promenade level of Nexus Station holds 247 active vendor stalls on any given cycle. It's loud, it's crowded, it smells like 17 different atmospheric preferences, mixing in ways that violate several health codes and at least one treaty provision. I'd been arguing with Thad about translation fees for the better part of an hour. Standard routine. Every third cycle we met here to sort cargo manifests, settle accounts, and eat. Or rather, Thad ate while I tried not to look at his food. The stew was brown. Steam rose from it in lazy spirals that smelled like something had died, been resurrected, and died again more thoroughly. I'd learned not to ask what humans considered edible. The list was long, disturbing, and included several items classified as industrial solvents by galactic Concord standards. Mushroom stew, Thad said through a full mouth, his translation device barely keeping pace with his chewing. My grandmother's recipe. Well, close enough. Hard to get real shiitakes out here. It smells like a biological weapon. That's the garlic. I clicked my beak in what humans had learned to recognize as disapproval. 3 years of partnership, and he still brought food that cleared a 5-meter radius around our usual table. Thad was tall by galactic standards, thick across the shoulders, short dark hair that perpetually looked like he'd just woken up. His face carried the kind of casual expression that suggested nothing in the universe had ever particularly bothered him. He worked as a cargo hauler and occasionally stood in doorways looking large until problems went away. Most species found him unremarkable. Most species hadn't spent 3 years watching him lift things that required mechanized assistance and shrug off injuries that would hospitalize anyone else for weeks. Humans were classified as Class 12 Death World origin. That meant Earth ranked in the top tier of planets considered actively hostile to life. The gravity was crushing. The weather killed without warning. The wildlife was endless and creative in its methods of execution, and somehow humans had thrived there. Built civilizations, reached the stars. They'd been part of the galactic community for 12 years. We still didn't know what to make of them. The market that cycle was typical. A Pelori merchant 3 stalls down was hawking crystallized proteins. A symphony child, probably 6 cycles old, asked its mother why the humans' food smelled wrong. 2 Droth were negotiating freight contracts in their grinding baritone voices. Normal, peaceful, boring. Then the lighting shifted. It was subtle. Just a slight change in color temperature, from warm white to cool blue. Every species on the promenade recognized it immediately. It meant the docking authority had flagged an incoming vessel. Not dangerous exactly, but notable. Worth attention. The whispers started 3 seconds later. My translator picked up fragments from a dozen conversations at once. Different languages, different tones, same word moving through the crowd like electricity through water. Morven. The Pelori merchant's display screen went dark. Pale Hand. 2 Droth turned and walked very quickly toward the residential levels. The symphony child took flight wings beating in panic patterns. Pale Hand is here. I'd heard the name. Everyone had. Morven was a legend. The kind of story you told to explain why contracts should be honored and debts should be paid. He'd been killing across 37 worlds for 200 years. Professional, efficient, unstoppable. The Pale Hand never failed. He had diplomatic immunity from 6 governments. He'd walked into a planetary summit once and dragged his target out of the room while armed guards watched and did nothing because they knew. They absolutely knew that even if they killed him, he'd take half of them first, and the survivors would spend their remaining days wondering when he'd return to finish the job. The market began to empty, not slowly, not casually. Merchants pulled down displays mid-transaction. Customers abandoned purchases. A group of Symphony took flight toward the upper levels in a flutter of wings that sounded like panic given physical form. Two conquered security officers walked very quickly in the opposite direction of the docking ring. Neither one looked back. I stood up. My feathers had gone completely flat against my skull, which is what happens when my species experiences existential dread. "Thad," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "We need to leave, now." He looked up from his stew, took another bite, chewed thoughtfully. "I haven't finished eating. The pale hand is here. Morven. Do you understand what that means? Big guy, right forearms, kills people for money. He has ended more lives than some plagues. He has diplomatic immunity that makes him untouchable. He once walked through a military blockade, and no one fired a single shot because they absolutely knew that even if they killed him, yeah, I got it, scary assassin. And I paid 8 credits for this stew. I'm not wasting it." The promenade was nearly empty now. Shops sealed, corridors cleared. The only sounds were the hum of the station's environmental systems and the soft scrape of Thad's spoon against his container. Then the footsteps came. Heavy, slow, deliberate. Each one sent a faint vibration through the deck plating. I could feel them in my hollow bones. The rhythm was patient, unhurried, the cadence of something that had never once needed to rush because nothing had ever escaped it. Morven walked onto the promenade level like death taking a stroll. He stood over 8 feet tall. His skin was dark and armored, looking less like flesh and more like cracked obsidian. Four arms hung at his sides, each one ending in fingers that curved into natural blades. The kind of biological weapons that suggested his species had evolved specifically to kill. His eyes were black from edge to edge. No pupils, no iris. Just voids that moved slowly across the abandoned market with the patience of something that had never once been told no. He stopped. There in the middle of the empty promenade, a human was sitting at a food stall eating stew. Thad looked up, met those black eyes without flinching. And then he smiled, wide and warm and completely genuine. "Want some," Thad said, lifting his container slightly. "The broth is unreal." Time stopped. On every security screen across the station, hundreds of eyes watched. I was hiding behind a support column 20 feet away, my feathers cycling through colors that didn't have names in any language. I'd stopped breathing. No one spoke to the pale hand like that. No one looked at him without fear. No one sat casually in his path and offered him lunch. Morven tilted his massive head to one side. The movement was slow, controlled. He studied Thad the way a predator studies something it cannot immediately classify as prey or threat. Something new. Something wrong. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10, 15. Then without a word, Morven walked on. His footsteps faded down the corridor toward the docking ring's upper levels. Steady, measured, unchanged. Thad watched him go, shrugged, went back to his stew. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the floor behind the column. My heart was beating so fast my feathers were vibrating. "Thad," I whispered into my communicator, "what is wrong with you?" His voice came back, relaxed and warm. "Nothing. The stew really is good today. You should try some." 3 species had already filed formal complaints about the smell in Corridor 9 by the time I caught up with him. Thad was walking back toward the cargo levels with his empty stew container tucked under one arm and a look on his face like nothing in the galaxy had ever bothered him. I flew in front of him and hovered at eye level, my wings beating fast enough to blur. "You need to explain what just happened." I offered a guy some stew. He said no. Pretty normal interaction. That was not a guy. That was Morven. That was the Pale Hand. He has personally ended the lives of over 400 confirmed targets across 7 systems. He once walked through a military blockade. "Big fella, yeah, I got that. And you offered him stew. Would have been rude not to. He was standing right there." I landed on a railing and pressed both wings against my face. A gesture that doesn't translate well to species without wings, but conveys roughly the same emotional state as a human hitting their head against a wall repeatedly. I'd been Thad's business partner for 3 years. I'd learned many things about humans in that time. They were stronger than they looked. They could survive injuries that would kill most species twice over. They ate things that should not be eaten, and they had absolutely no functioning sense of self-preservation. I'd also learned that arguing with Thad when he'd already made up his mind was like arguing with a bulkhead. At least a bulkhead would eventually dent. We reached the cargo level in silence. Thad's bay was large and cluttered. Shipping containers, spare parts. A small living area he'd built in one corner that consisted of a sleeping mat, a food processor, and more coffee-making equipment than seemed strictly necessary. It wasn't pretty, but it was his. He tossed the stew container into a cleaning unit and dropped into his chair. "So why is he here?" Thad asked. I blinked. "What?" "The pale hand. He doesn't just show up for fun. Someone hired him. Someone on this station is a target." That was the thing about Thad that most species missed. They saw the size, the smile, the casual attitude. They assumed he was simple. He was not simple. He just chose not to make a show of thinking. I pulled up my translation logs. Part of my job involved monitoring communication channels for cargo-related chatter. I had access to several low security bands. I started filtering through recent traffic looking for anything unusual. It took me 20 minutes to find it, a coded message, sent on a syndicate frequency, routed through 3 relay points and poorly encrypted. Whoever sent it had been in a hurry or didn't care about subtlety. "The target is Lai," I said, my voice dropping. "A dock worker, young. He saw something he wasn't supposed to see." "What did he see?" I pulled up more data. Cross-referenced shipping manifests with security logs. My feathers slowly flattened against my body, which was a sign of deep distress in my species. "Not a weapons deal," I said quietly. "Worse. He witnessed Overseer Valen personally meeting with syndicate representatives, exchanging classified galactic conquered intelligence. There's evidence, a recording. The syndicates wanted the witness gone before he realizes what he has and reports it." Thad leaned forward. His expression hadn't changed, but something behind his eyes shifted. I'd seen it before. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something older and deeper. It was the look of a creature from a world where everything was trying to kill you, and you'd decided calmly and completely that you were going to kill it first. "Who is it?" Thad asked. I cross-referenced the docking schedules with work rosters. "Jarek," I said. "Young Lai, barely an adult. Works the cargo docks on the lower ring. He moves freight for barely enough credits to cover food and housing." Thad stood up. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He walked to a storage locker, opened it, and began pulling out items. A heavy jacket, a pair of boots with reinforced soles, a small toolkit. "Thad, what are you doing?" "Going to get the kid." "You cannot be serious. The Pale Hand has a contract. If you interfere, you become a secondary target. There are no rules that protect you. The Concord will not help. Overseer Valen will not help. No one will help." "I know." "Then what?" He stopped, looked at me. His face was calm, his voice was steady. "Because he's a kid, Selras, and he's scared even if he doesn't know why yet, and nobody else is going to do a damn thing about it." He walked out of the cargo bay and into the corridor. I watched him go. I thought about all the reasons this was insane. I thought about the Pale Hand's 4-bladed arms. I thought about the 6 mercenaries the syndicates probably had waiting as backup. I thought about every logical, rational, sensible argument against what Thad was about to do. Then I grabbed my translator kit and flew after him. Jarek's quarters were in the lower ring, small, cramped, the kind of space the station provided to workers who couldn't afford anything better. Thad knocked on the thin door and waited. After a moment, it slid open. A young Lai face looked up at him with yenelbu golden eyes, scaled skin that shifted through nervous colors, a tail that curled defensively. "Mr. Corvin," Jarek said, surprised, "is something wrong with the cargo schedule?" Thad smiled. It wasn't his usual grin. It was softer, gentler, the kind of smile you give someone when you're about to change their entire night. "Pack a bag, kid. You're staying with me tonight." Jarek's eyes grew wider. "Why?" Thad put a hand on the young alien's shoulder, gentle despite the strength behind it. "Because someone paid a lot of money to make sure you don't wake up tomorrow, and I'm not going to let that happen." We got back to the cargo bay 17 minutes later. Jarek was shaking. His scales had gone pale. His tail wrapped around himself so tightly I thought it might cut off circulation. Thad had explained on the way back, gently, carefully. But there was no gentle way to tell someone that a professional killer had been paid to end their life. The kid hadn't said much since, just stared at Thad with those waggy golden eyes like he was trying to understand how this was happening. How his life had gone from moving cargo containers to being hunted by the most dangerous assassin in 7 systems. I tried to reassure him, told him Thad was strong, that we had a plan. I was lying. We didn't have a plan. We had a cargo bay and a stubborn human who didn't know when to quit. Thad started working immediately. He rearranged cargo containers to create narrow pathways and blind corners. He positioned heavy crates at choke points. He checked the fire suppression system and tested the emergency venting controls. He wasn't building a fortress. He was building a maze. One designed by someone who understood that in a fight environment mattered more than size. I watched from a high shelf documenting everything. It was what I did. Observe, record, try to understand. Thad moved with focus I'd rarely seen from him. There was a pattern to it. Methodical, calm. It reminded me of something I'd read about Earth predators. Preparation behavior, a hunting pattern, deeply unsettling when you understood what it meant. My communicator buzzed. A message from a symphony trader I knew. It read simply, "Tell the human we're sorry. There is nothing we can do." Another message arrived from a Pelori cargo partner. "It was good working with you, Silras. May your next cycle be kinder." They were sending condolences, not to Jarek, to Thad, because in their minds, he was already dead. Hours passed. The station's lighting cycled toward evening mode. Thad made coffee using a battered machine he kept in the corner. The smell filled the cargo bay. Jarek wrinkled his scaled nose but said nothing. I'd long ago accepted that humans consume things that defied reason. Then the call came. Overseer Valen's voice came through Thad's private channel, thin, trembling. "Mr. Corvin, I'm asking you as a personal request to release the lie worker. The Pale Hands employers have significant political standing. If this situation escalates, it could threaten the entire station's neutrality agreement." Thad picked up the communicator. His voice was calm. "With respect, Overseer, the kid didn't do anything wrong. I understand that, but one life against the safety of 200,000 residents is not a calculation I can ignore." "Then don't calculate. Just do the right thing." There was a long silence. "I cannot protect you, Mr. Corvin. I'm not asking you to." The call ended. Thad took a sip of coffee and said nothing else about it. It was 3 hours before the dawn cycle when the footsteps came. Heavy, measured, unmistakable. They stopped outside Cargo Bay 14. Jarek's entire body went rigid, his tail curled tight against his legs. Every feather on my body lay completely still, and I made myself as small as possible on my shelf. The Pale Hand's voice came through the reinforced door, deep, resonant, utterly without emotion. "Human, I know what you are doing. I respect what you are doing, but it will not change the outcome. You have until the station lights cycle to dawn mode. Surrender the target and you will not be harmed." Thad set down his coffee. He walked to the door. He unlocked it, pulled it open, and leaned against the frame. Morven filled the corridor. His black eyes reflected the dim lighting. His forearms hung loose at his sides, the blade fingers slightly extended. He smelled like cold metal and something ancient. Thad looked up at him and smiled. "Okay, so a priest, a quantum physicist, and a black hole walk into a bar," Thad said. The Pale Hand did not move. The bartender looks up and says, "What is this, some kind of singularity event?" The physicist says, "Technically, yes." The priest says, "I have questions about the afterlife." And the black hole doesn't say anything because it already consumed the punchline. Silence. Complete total silence. Somewhere on the station, a security officer watching the feed dropped his drink. Morven stared at Thad. His massive head tilted slowly the same way it had on the promenade. The first time he'd seen a human sit calmly in his path and offer him food. His black eyes narrowed by a fraction. "You tell jokes," the Pale Hand said. "In the face of death, you tell jokes." "Yeah, well, it's a human thing." Thad picked up his coffee cup from where he had set it on a crate just inside the door. He took a long, slow sip. Then he looked the 8-foot assassin directly in those black eyes. "I'm not giving you the kid, so either come in and try to take him, or sit down and I'll pour you a cup." The Pale Hand's 4 hands flexed. The blades caught the light. Neither of them moved. Then Morven spoke again. His voice was different, still emotionless, but something else had crept in, something I couldn't identify. I have killed across 37 worlds for 200 years. Warriors, soldiers, kings. Only once did I fail to complete a contract. The target was a human. He laughed at me, just like you. He died anyway. But it took me 3 days. Thad's smile faded. His name, Morven continued, was Jonas Corvin. The coffee cup slipped from Thad's hand. It hit the deck plating. Liquid spread across the floor. That was my father, Thad said quietly. I know. You have his eyes and his foolishness. Morven's head tilted again. He fought me for 3 days in the cargo holds of a transport ship. Even when I ran him through with all 4 blades, he laughed. His last words were, "My sons will be better than me." Thad's hands were shaking. I'd never seen that before. In 3 years, I'd never seen Thad's hands shake. "I give you until dawn," Morven said. "Then I come for the bow, and unlike your father, you will not last 3 days." The pale hand turned and walked down the corridor. His footsteps faded into the distance. Thad stood in the doorway for a long time. Then he closed the door, locked it, turned around. His face was different. Something had cracked open behind his eyes. Jarek was staring at him from behind a cargo container. The kid's scales had gone completely white. "Mr. Corvin," Jarek's voice was small. "Your father." Thad didn't answer immediately. He walked to where the coffee had spilled, stared at it. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Yeah, 10 years ago. They told me it was an accident during a cargo transfer. I never believed it." He looked at Jarek, then at me. "My father died protecting cargo workers. He refused to deliver weapons that would be used for genocide. The contractor sent the pale hand. Dad fought for 3 days to give those workers time to escape. And I swore I'd never let that happen again. Never let someone die alone because nobody else had the spine to help." Thad's hands were still shaking, but when he smiled, it was real. "So here's what's going to happen, kid. You're going to stay behind me. You're going to do exactly what I say. And when dawn comes, we're going to show the pale hand that Jonas Corvin was right. His sons are better than him." He started preparing again. Faster now, more focused. Jarek watched him with something like awe and terror mixed together. I recorded everything because someone needed to document this. Someone needed to remember what happened when a human decided that fear was just information and information could be filed away for later. "I need medical supplies," I said, hovering near the door. "Emergency rations, field dressings. This could be a long night." Thad looked up from his work. "Storage level 3, be fast. And Silras, be careful." "Always am," I said. I should have listened to that last part. Dawn was 3 hours away. The pale hand was coming, and Thaddeus Corvin was laughing while he worked. Thad worked through the night with the kind of focus that made you forget he was human. Most species, when faced with certain death, freeze. It's biological, rational. The predator might pass you by if you don't move. Humans don't freeze. They build. I watched from my perch on the upper shelf as Thad rearranged 3-ton cargo containers like they were furniture. His muscles strained. Sweat ran down his face. But he didn't slow down. He positioned a container on a magnetic release track near the entrance, rigged it so a single kick would send 800 pounds of freight swinging sideways. A trap for the first thing that came through that door. Then he moved to the fire suppression system. Checked the chemical foam reserves. Tested the pressure valves. Made sure the vents could deploy on command. Level 4 fire suppression holds 1,200 liters. He muttered, more to himself than to us. Deploy time is 0.8 seconds. Coverage radius is 9 meters. That'll blind anyone coming through Section 2. Jarek was sitting on a crate watching with those wide golden eyes. His tail was still wrapped tight around himself. He hadn't spoken in an hour. "Mr. Corvin," the kid's voice was small. "What are you doing?" Thad looked up, wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, making it expensive. Expensive? The pale hand is professional. Professionals calculate cost versus reward. I can't stop him, but I can make sure that when he comes through that door, he pays for every inch. He moved to the lighting controls, started programming sequences, emergency mode, blackout mode, strobe patterns. Humans fight dirty, kid. We don't have claws or armor or forearms with built-in knives. We have environment, tools, the ability to turn everything around us into a weapon. Thad paused, looked at the maze he'd built. Narrow corridors between cargo stacks, blind corners, choke points where only one person could pass at a time. On Earth, we learned early, when something bigger and meaner than you wants to kill you, you don't meet it head on. You make it come to you, on your terms, in your territory. He grabbed a metal support bar from a damaged crate, tested its weight, nodded, set it within easy reach. Pattern break, narration to action to dialogue to thought. I documented it all. My feathers had stopped cycling through fear colors. Now they were shifting through something else. Fascination, maybe respect. Thad pulled out his coffee maker. Started brewing despite everything. You want some? He asked Jarek. The kid shook his head. Smart. This stuff would probably kill you. Caffeine's toxic to most species. He took a long sip. For humans, it's breakfast. 2.5 hours until dawn. Thad sat down on a crate across from Jarek. His hands were steadier now. The work had calmed him. You ever hear about Earth? Thad asked. Jarek nodded. Class 12 death world. Everything there tries to kill you. Yeah, that's the reputation, and it's not wrong. Thad leaned back. Where I grew up in the northern mountains, we had these wildfires. Happened every summer when things got dry. Fire would move through the forest faster than you could run. His voice had changed, gone softer, more distant. I was 12. My little brother Cassian was 8. We were hiking with our father when the wind shifted. Fire cut us off on a hillside, no way out. No help coming. Jarek's tail uncurled slightly. He was listening. Cassian was crying, couldn't breathe through the smoke, completely panicked. Thad's eyes were far away. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. But my father Jonas, he looked at me and said something I didn't understand at the time. What did he say? He said, when you're scared, boy, when your brain is screaming at you to freeze up and die, you do something the predator doesn't expect. You laugh. Thad smiled at the memory. He started telling terrible jokes. Worst ones you can imagine. Why did the chicken cross the road kind of stuff? And Cassian started laughing through the tears, through the smoke. And we started moving. We followed a creek bed down the hill, stayed low where the smoke was thinner, kept moving, kept laughing, and we made it out. Jarek was staring at him. Your father taught you to laugh at death. He taught me that fear is just information. It tells you there's danger, but it doesn't tell you what to do about it. That part's up to you. 2 hours until dawn. I was recording all of this. My personal log was filling with observations about human psychology that would take me years to process. Then my communicator went silent, just stopped working. Mid-transmission while I was uploading data to my backup server. Thad, I said. My voice was calm, but something in my tone made him look up immediately. Communications are jammed. He stood, walked to his own equipment, tried several frequencies. Nothing. Someone's blocking all signals in this sector, I said. Standard enforced a protocol before an assault. Thad moved to the security panel, pulled up external feeds. 6 figures were moving through the corridor outside. Mixed species. Armed. They stopped just out of visual range of his door. Enforcers, Thad said quietly. Professional muscle. The syndicates brought backup. Then the broadcast came through on emergency override. Audio only. A voice I didn't recognize. Human, we know you can hear this. We have your partner, the symphony translator. My plumage compressed tight against my skull. The voice continued. You have 10 minutes to surrender the lie worker. Bring him to corridor junction 7. Come alone. You get the bird back. Everyone walks away. Thad's jaw tightened. If you don't comply, we start removing feathers. One at a time. The transmission ended. Jarek looked at Thad. You should trade me. Save her. No. But she's your partner. Your friend. You're just a kid who saw something you shouldn't have, and now powerful people want you dead. Thad's voice was steel. That's not your fault, and I don't trade innocent people. He started pulling on his heavy jacket, the one with reinforced padding across the shoulders and chest. What are you doing? I would have asked if I'd been there. But I wasn't there. I was in detention level holding cell 7. The flashback hit me like a physical thing. An hour and a half earlier, while Thad was still fortifying the cargo bay, I'd left the cargo bay to get supplies. Emergency rations, medical kit, just in case. They'd been waiting. 6 of them. Too fast, too coordinated. A Kalani enforcer hit me with something that scrambled my nervous system. I went down, feathers everywhere. When I woke up, I was in a cell, cramped, dark, the kind of space they use for temporary holding before transfer to Concord Authority. Except no Concord Authority was coming. One of the enforcers, a Droth female, stood outside the energy barrier. "Nothing personal, Bird," she said. "Just business. Your human interfered with a very expensive contract. Now he pays." She activated a recording device, transmitted it to Thad. I saw myself on the screen, feathers matted, wing bent at wrong angle from the fall, but conscious, defiant. The Droth spoke into the camera. 10 minutes. Trade the kid for the bird. Don't be stupid, human." I looked directly at the lens, directly at Thad, wherever he was watching. "Don't you dare," I said. My voice was rough but clear. "Don't you dare trade me for that boy Thad. I didn't partner with a coward. You hear me? I partnered with someone who does the right thing even when it's hard, even when it cuts." The Droth hit me. My vision blurred. 9 minutes now, she said to the camera. The transmission cut. Back in the cargo bay, Thad was strapping on his boots, the ones with reinforced soles and magnetic grips. Jarek was shaking. "You can't fight 6 armed enforcers by yourself." "I'm not." "What?" Thad looked at him, really looked at him. "You're coming with me." "I can't fight. I'm not a warrior." "Neither am I, kid. I'm a cargo hauler who lifts heavy things. But right now, we're both going to be exactly what we need to be." He handed Jarek a tool, something that looked like a cargo scanner but modified. "You know how to access door controls." Jarek nodded slowly. "Good. That's your job. I'll handle the rest." 2 hours until dawn. They moved fast. I couldn't see them from my cell, but I could hear. The station's acoustic design carried sound in strange ways through the ventilation system. Footsteps, running, a crash, someone shouting. The lights in my corridor flickered. Once, twice, went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in. Dim red glow. The enforcers guarding me looked at each other. "Something's wrong," one said. Then the screaming started. It came from Corridor Junction 5, 2 levels up from my position. A Kalani enforcer by the sound. High-pitched, terrified, cut off suddenly. Silence. The Droth guarding my cell gripped her weapon tighter. "Check that out," she told her partner. The partner, another Kalani, moved toward the corridor junction. He made it 5 steps. The cargo container came out of nowhere. 800 pounds of freight on a magnetic track. Someone had rigged it, sent it sliding down the corridor at terminal velocity. It hit the Kalani like a hammer. The sound was catastrophic. Metal on chitin. The enforcer went down and didn't get up. The Droth spun, fired her weapon into the darkness. Nothing. "Come out, human fight like a..." The fire suppression system activated. Chemical foam exploded from ceiling vents, thick, blinding. It covered everything in seconds. The Droth clawed at her face, couldn't see. Thad came out of the foam like a nightmare. He was moving fast, faster than something his size should move. His jacket was covered in foam, but his eyes were clear, focused. He had a metal support bar in his hands. 2 hits, precise, brutal. The Droth went down. 4 enforcers left. Thad moved through the detention level like he'd built it himself, every corner, every blind spot. He knew where they'd be before they knew where he was. Environmental control, that's what he'd called it earlier. This was his territory now. I heard another crash from Corridor Junction 6. A Kalani's chittering scream cut short. That was 3 down. Then Jarek's voice over comms sealed them in Section 4-2, caught in the lockdown. 2 more trapped, 5 total. Then Jarek's voice shaking but determined. "Door control, overridden. You're clear." The lights came back on. Thad appeared in front of my cell. His jacket was torn. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. His knuckles were split, but he was grinning, actually grinning. "Hey, partner," he said. "Ready to go." He had a key card, taken from one of the enforcers. He swiped it. The energy barrier dropped. I stumbled out. My wing hurt. Everything hurt. Can you fly? Not well. Good enough. He looked at Jarek, who appeared from behind a corner. The kid was shaking, but standing. Nice work on those doors. I've never... I didn't... Jarek couldn't finish the sentence. You did good, kid. Now we run. We made it back to the cargo bay with 30 minutes to spare before dawn cycle. Thad sealed the door, reset all his traps, checked his wounds. 6 enforcers, I said. My voice was hoarse. You fought 6 armed enforcers. 3, Thad corrected. The cargo trap got 1. Jarek's door locks got 2. You being defiant made them angry enough to make mistakes. Team effort. I didn't do anything. You did everything. You told me not to trade you. That counts for more than you think. He sat down, winced. His ribs were definitely damaged. Jarek was staring at both of us like we'd lost our minds. Then the footsteps came again. Measured, patient, purposeful, but different this time. Not 6 sets of boots. 1 set, measured, patient, unstoppable. The pale hand had arrived. Dawn cycle began. The station's lighting shifted from night mode to day. Artificial sunrise through the viewports. Morven's voice came through the door. That same emotionless tone. You defeated my client's enforcers. Impressive, but ultimately irrelevant. Thad stood. His hands were shaking again. Not from fear this time, from adrenaline that had nowhere left to go. I'm coming in now, Morven said. You fought well. Your father would be proud. But this ends the same way his story did. The door began to override. Someone on the outside had access codes. The locking mechanism clicked. Disengaged. Thad picked up the metal support bar. His makeshift weapon. Against 4 blade arms and 200 years of killing experience, it looked like a toy. I pressed myself against the far wall, pulled Jarek behind a cargo container. The door slid open. The pale hand stepped through. And Thaddeus Corvin, bleeding and battered and completely outmatched, started laughing. Not nervous laughter, not fear. Real laughter, deep and genuine. You know what's funny? Thad said. My whole life people told me I was crazy, that I didn't take things seriously enough, that someday my attitude would get me killed. Morven stood in the doorway, all 4 hands extended, blades catching the dawn light. They were probably right, Thad continued. But here's the thing about humans. We don't laugh because we think it's funny. We laugh because it's the only thing that works when everything else fails. He raised the metal bar. My father laughed when you killed him. And I'm going to laugh too. Not because I think I can win, but because that's what we do. That's what makes us human. The pale hand regarded him with those void black eyes. Fascinating, Morven said softly. Then he moved. The voice continued. Thad swung the metal bar. It connected with nothing but air. Morven was already behind him. 1 blade arm swept toward Thad's spine. Thad dropped. Rolled. The blade missed by centimeters. Carved a line through the cargo container behind him like it was paper. He came up swinging. The bar hit Morven's armored forearm. The impact rang through the cargo bay like a bell. Morven didn't flinch. He grabbed the bar with 2 hands. Twisted. The metal bent. Thad let go before his wrists broke. They separated, circled. Thad was breathing hard. Blood ran from the cut above his eye. His ribs screamed with every breath. He'd already been wounded fighting the enforcers. Already exhausted. Morven looked exactly as he had when he walked in. Unhurried. Patient. Inevitable. Your father lasted 3 days, Morven said. His voice was still emotionless, but there was something underneath now. Something I couldn't name. He was exceptional for a human. You will not last 3 minutes. Thad wiped blood from his eye, grinned through split lips. Yeah, let's find out. He lunged, not at Morven, at the wall panel beside the assassin. His hand slammed the emergency vent control. Atmosphere roared out through the ceiling vents, not enough to decompress, just enough to create massive air turbulence. Papers flew. Loose debris whipped through the bay. Morven's balance shifted. Microseconds. Thad was already moving, grabbed a cargo hook from the floor. Threw it not at the assassin, but at the overhead lighting panel. Glass shattered. Sparks rained down. The bay plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in 3 seconds later. Dim red glow. Morven stood in the center of the bay, completely still, all 4 blade arms extended. Waiting. Thad was pressed against a cargo container 20 feet away, chest heaving, hands shaking. Clever, Morven said. Environmental manipulation. Your species' preferred method. But darkness does not hinder me. My species evolved in caves where light never reached. He moved. Faster this time. Thad barely got out of the way. One blade caught his shoulder. Fabric tore. Skin opened. Blood spread. Thad grunted, stumbled. Morven's next strike would have taken his head off, but Jarek did something I never expected. The kid threw a tool case. Not at Morven. At the fire suppression panel. Chemical foam exploded again, filled the space between them. Morven walked through it like it wasn't there. Kept coming. But it bought seconds. Thad grabbed another support bar, swung wild, connected with Morven's chest. The impact did nothing. Morven's blade arm swept across, caught Thad across the ribs, the same ribs that were already cracked. Something broke. I heard it from 30 feet away. Thad went down hard. Morven stood over him, all four blades raised. You fought well, human, better than most, but this is where your story ends. From my position behind the cargo container, I watched Thad lie on the deck plating, wounded, shattered, defeated. And he laughed, not a chuckle, not a gasp, a real laugh, deep from his chest despite the broken ribs, despite everything. You want to know something? Thad said. Blood in his mouth made the words thick. My father didn't tell you everything before he died. Morven paused, blades still raised but motionless. He told you we'd be better, but he didn't tell you why. Thad pushed himself up. Slowly, every movement cost him, but he got to his knees. He didn't mean we'd be stronger or faster or tougher. He got to his feet, swaying but standing. He meant we'd be more stubborn, more willing to pay the price, more committed to doing the right thing even when it's stupid. Thad's hands were shaking. His vision was probably blurred. He had no chance of winning. And he smiled. So yeah, come on. Let's see how long I last. 3 days like my dad, 3 minutes like you said. Morven stared at him, the massive head tilted. That studying motion. Why, the pale hand asked. It was the first question I'd ever heard him ask. Why do this? The lie is nothing to you. You owe him nothing. You will gain nothing. Why? Thad wiped blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. Because someone has to. Before Morven could move, every screen in the cargo bay erupted with light. Not just the cargo bay, every screen on Nexus Station, every display panel, every personal device, every security monitor. Jarek's face filled them all. The kid was broadcasting. Station-wide. No, not station-wide. Galaxy-wide. His scaled hands shook as he held up a data chip. My name is Jarek, dock worker level 7. 3 cycles ago, I witnessed Overseer Valen meeting with representatives from the Verith and Solion syndicates. She gave them classified galactic Concord intelligence, shipping routes, security protocols, diplomatic communications. He pressed a button. Files flooded across every screen, classified documents, meeting recordings, financial transfers. This is everything, every transaction, every betrayal. I'm sending this to Concord Central Authority, to every news network in 7 systems, to everyone. Overseer Valen's voice erupted through the station's communication system. Shrill, panicked. Morven, the pale hand, I'm tripling your fee. Kill them all. The human, the bird, the lie. Do it now. Silence fell across the cargo bay. Morven stood absolutely still. His black eyes moved from Thad to the screens to the speakers carrying Valen's voice. Time stopped. On every screen, Concord Authority ships were already moving. Arrest warrants being issued. The syndicate network was collapsing in real time as the evidence spread. The contract is void, Thad said quietly. Your employer lied to you, endangered the entire station for personal profit. That violates your code, doesn't it? Morven's blades retracted slowly, one by one. For 200 years, the pale hand said, I have maintained a perfect record. Every contract completed, every target eliminated. My reputation is built on absolute reliability. He turned to look at Thad fully. But my reputation is also built on honor, on code, on accepting only legitimate contracts from honorable employers. All four arms lowered. Overseer Valen lied about the nature of this contract. She endangered 200,000 innocent residents. She violated the principles I uphold. Morven's voice carried something new. Not quite emotion, but close. The contract is void. Thad exhaled, almost collapsed. So you're leaving? No, Mom. The word hung in the air like a blade. Overseer Valen has insulted me, attempted to make me her accomplice in corruption. That requires response. He looked at Thad. Your father earned my respect through his defiance. You have earned something rarer. My uncertainty. In 200 years, no creature has ever made me question my path. The cargo bay door exploded inward. 12 figures poured through. Overseer Valen's private security force, armed with military-grade weapons. Trained, professional. Their commander pointed at all of us. Terminate them, all of them, no survivors. Morven moved to stand beside Thad, the pale hand and the laughing human, side by side. Can you fight? Morven asked. Thad picked up the bent metal bar. I can barely stand. Good enough. They came at us in a coordinated assault. Professional, tactical. They lasted 90 seconds. Morven was surgical precision. 4 blade arms cutting through formation like a conductor leading an orchestra of death. Every movement purposeful. Every strike ending a threat. Thad was chaos, swinging that metal bar like a madman, using cargo containers as shields, throwing anything not bolted down. Environmental warfare at its finest. Jarek worked the door controls, sealing exits, trapping Valen's forces in the killing box Thad had built. I provided tactical information, calling out positions, blind spots, threats. A Droth guard came at Thad from behind. Morven's blade arm intercepted. The guard went down. 3 Kalani surrounded Morven. Thad threw a cargo hook at the overhead supports. Metal rained down. The Kalani scattered. Morven finished them. They fought like they'd trained together for years, but they'd met hours ago. The last guard standing tried to flee. Morven stepped in his path. All 4 blades extended. You served a dishonorable master, the pale hand said. Choose better next time. The guard dropped his weapon. Surrendered. The cargo bay fell silent except for heavy breathing and the groan of damaged infrastructure. Thad leaned against a cargo container. Blood everywhere. Ribs definitely broken. Shoulder wound deep. He looked terrible. He was grinning. Not bad, he said to Morven, for a professional. The pale hand tilted his head. Not bad yourself for a cargo hauler. Galactic Conquered forces arrived 6 minutes later. They found Overseer Valen in her office surrounded by evidence she couldn't destroy fast enough. She was arrested on 17 counts of corruption, treason, and conspiracy. The syndicates she'd been working with collapsed within hours. 3 star systems worth of criminal operations exposed and dismantled. All because a dock worker saw something he shouldn't have. And a human decided that was enough reason to fight. Morven stood at the docking ring 3 hours later preparing to leave. His ship was sleek, dark, the kind of vessel that traveled fast and left no traces. Thad showed up to see him off, bandaged, bruised, moving like every step hurt, because every step did hurt. 200 years, Morven said. His black eyes reflected the station lights. I have never voided a contract. Sorry about that. Do not apologize. You gave me something more valuable than my perfect record. What's that? Uncertainty. For 200 years, I knew exactly what I was, what I did, my place in this galaxy. You made me question that. The pale hand extended one blade hand, an offering, a gesture of respect. Thad shook it, winced when the blades pressed against his palm but didn't let go. Your father fought me for 3 days, Morven said. You fought beside me for 90 seconds. I do not know which impressed me more. He'd have liked you. Weird thing to say about the guy who killed him, but it's true. Something happened then that no living creature in the galaxy had witnessed in 200 years. Morven smiled. It was subtle, barely a movement, just the corners of his stone-like mouth shifting by millimeters. But it was real. If you ever need someone killed honorably human, contact me. First contract is free. I owe your family a debt. He turned to board his ship. Hey, Morven. The pale hand looked back. Thanks for not killing me. Thank you for making me laugh. The ship undocked, jumped to faster than light. Gone. Thad stood there for a long time watching the empty space where death itself had smiled at him. Life on Nexus Station returned to normal, or what passed for normal. Jarek was promoted to Galactic Concord Investigative Services. His evidence had exposed the largest corruption network in a decade. 3 systems were safer because a scared kid decided to be brave. The station appointed a new overseer. Someone with actual integrity this time. Someone who understood that protecting people was more important than protecting profits. Merchants returned to the promenade. Ships docked. Trade resumed. But things had changed in small ways. The Droth merchant, who sold crystallized proteins, offered Thad free meals. You made the pale hand smile. That is worth something. The symphony child who'd been terrified of Thad's food now asked to hear stories about humans. Wanted to know why they laughed at danger. The security officers who'd fled when Morven arrived started asking Thad for self-defense lessons. Learning that bravery wasn't about being fearless, it was about acting despite the fear. 2 weeks after everything happened, Thad called his brother. Cassian's face appeared on the screen. Younger than Thad, cleaner, sitting in what looked like a well-organized medical facility. You look rough, Cassian said immediately. What happened? Thad was sitting in his cargo bay, the one that still had blast marks and broken containers, the one that smelled like coffee and chemical foam. Quiet week, nothing special. Cassian squinted at him. You're lying. Probably. Thad. I met the guy who killed Dad. The screen went still. Cassian's expression shifted through several emotions at once. What Thad we were told, it was an accident, a cargo incident. You're saying it wasn't an accident. He was assassinated by the pale hand, Morven himself. Cassian's face went pale. Jesus Christ, Thad, and you're still alive. Long story, but I wanted you to know. Dad's last words were about us, about how we'd be better than him. Cassian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick. Were we? They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important, the way brothers do when the important things are too big to say out loud. When the call ended, Thad sat in the dim light of his wrecked cargo bay. Sore, tired, alive. I was on my shelf, recording, always recording. My personal log was open, voice recording so soft only my translator could pick it up. Personal log, Silra's, Symphony Translator, Nexus Station. I have been studying humans for 3 years. I understand them less with every passing cycle. Every species in this galaxy has a survival instinct. Most of us freeze. It is rational, logical. The predator might pass us by. Some of us run, also rational. Distance equals safety. A few of us fight, when cornered, when there is no other choice. Humans are the only species I've encountered that laugh. They laugh when they are terrified. They laugh when they are hurt. They laugh when everything is falling apart around them. And somehow, against every rational calculation, against every law of nature, against 200 years of perfect assassination record, it works. I watched Thaddeus Corvin face the pale hand, an 8-foot assassin who has killed across 37 worlds, who has never failed a contract in 2 centuries. Thad offered him soup, told him jokes, fought him bleeding and broken, made him question everything he was, made him smile. I have studied 200 species across 40 systems. I have translated languages older than my civilization. I have documented first contact scenarios and cultural exchange programs and diplomatic incidents. But I have never documented anything like this. Humans do not win because they are stronger. They are not. They do not win because they are faster or more intelligent or better adapted. They win because they refuse to accept the rules. They laugh at death and turn it into an ally. They protect strangers like family. They tell terrible jokes in the face of extinction. They make the impossible seem routine. Just another Tuesday, as Thad would say. I will never understand them. I have accepted this, but I understand why the pale hand smiled, why 200 years of certainty cracked when faced with a human eating soup. They make you believe. in impossible things, in defying odds, in laughing when you should scream. And belief, I am learning, is more powerful than any weapon, more powerful than four blade arms, more powerful than fear. I am glad they are on our side. I closed the log, tucked my beak under my wing. Down below, Thad had gone back to his usual routine, making coffee, checking cargo manifests, planning the next job. Like he hadn't just fought the most dangerous assassin in known space, like he hadn't just changed everything. Tomorrow someone would ask him about the pale hand, about the fight, about how he survived. And he would smile that casual smile and say something about having a quiet week. Because that is what humans do. They face death with a joke and a shrug. They turn the extraordinary into the mundane. They make you believe that fighting impossible odds is just part of the job, just another Tuesday on Nexus Station, and somehow impossibly, beautifully, insanely, they make it true.